and welcome to all of our guests joining us for our webinar, Turning Your CEO into Your CCC, Chief Culture Champion. I'm Diane Ivek, Marketing Coordinator here at the Overture Group. I have the pleasure of welcoming you today and introduce you to our speakers. Bill Napolillo is our Director of Research and Candidate Development. With over 25 years of human resource experience, Bill talks to thousands of candidates every year. In today's discussion, Bill will bring the perspective from the candidate side, what they're looking for in terms of a company's culture. Also joining us today is our guest, Lisa Pinion, President of Pinion Solutions Group. Lisa brings the knowledge and experience needed to build a company's culture. With over 20 years in leadership roles, Lisa's contributions have resulted in local and national recognition as a best places to work. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the presentation, which we will address in the Q&A session. All attendees will receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentation along with a copy of the recorded session. So let's get started with Bill.
Thank you, Diane, and good afternoon, everyone. Company culture. Everyone's talking about it. We see it on job postings. Candidates, of the many candidates that I speak with, they're always looking for a strong cultural fit. However, very few could really articulate exactly what it is. Additionally, I see a lot of people lose their jobs today because they are not a cultural fit. At least that's what they say, but they don't really understand what that means. So our learning objectives for today will cover three key pieces. Why culture matters, whose job is culture anyway, building the business case for a high-performance culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Great Peter Drucker quote. But doesn't great strategy mean the same as great culture? I mean, I hear a lot of candidates say they want a company that has a strong business strategy. In fact, that's what they're good at. Aren't the two the same?
Well, you can't, in some instances, have one without the other. Personally, I love this Peter Drucker article. It's one of the great reads of the benefits of dynamic workplace cultures. But what it says, and why culture is so important and why it trumps strategy, is you can have the best plans in the world, but if the culture isn't going to let those plans happen, then those plans will die. So great companies respect the power of culture and use it to help make change. They ask questions like, who do we want to be? What are we great at? And what will we be uniquely advantaged at doing?
So it sounds like the culture will really support the strategy, is what you're saying, Lisa.
The culture will drive the strategy.
I don't hear that very often these days. Let's take a look at a definition of culture as defined by Webster. It's pretty basic, the beliefs, the customs, arts, etc. of a particular society, group, place, or time. A particular society that has its own beliefs, ways of life, art, etc. A way of thinking, behaving, or working that exist in a place or organization, such as business. So I know that's a very academic, definition, but what exactly is culture? And how would you describe that, Lisa?
So, well, simply said, culture is how we do things around here, how work gets done at this organization. Culture is also your brand. A vibrant culture provides a cooperative and collaborative environment for a brand to thrive in. And your brand is really the single most important asset to differentiate your company consistently over time. There are some great companies with really outstanding cultures and brands. Zappos is one of them. Tony Hsieh is the CEO of Zappos, and he is probably one of the most interviewed, rewarded, and recognized champions of corporate culture and brand. And that's because he wants, like any great chef, he wants to share his recipe for success so that other companies can thrive and create dynamic workplace cultures of their own. There's a significant bottom line impact to doing that. So, the more functional your culture is, the more profitable your organization is and can be. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But when you compare that with companies with dysfunctional cultures who are spinning downward toward bankruptcy, it's easy to see the financial impact and reward of a great culture.
I had the opportunity to work for Nordstrom many years ago, and I thought they had a fantastic culture. And one of the big reasons, they really empowered us to really drive the business. If I had to go to another store to pick up something, drive to someone's home, we were praised for it. They welcomed it. So I don't know a lot of companies that do that, at least from personal experience. However, Nordstrom was one that totally empowered its employees.
And Nordstrom has an outstanding brand for the customer experience that they create. They will do whatever it takes to make sure a customer is satisfied, and that translates to repeat business, and in many instances, a customer for life. So you take companies like Nordstrom, like Zappos, and like Southwest Airlines, who empower their people to do great things, live the values, and be ambassadors of their culture. And that's what we all aspire to do and to be. It's all about creating that experience for customers and also for employees, because that's where people want to be. So what culture isn't? Let's talk about that for a little bit. Culture is not foosball tables, exercise balls, and happy hours. Now, don't get me wrong, those things are great, but great culture doesn't always mean fun or alcohol. The icons of your culture need to be authentic. They need to further your mission and inspire performance and results. If you are a very formal, conservative, structured organization who tries to bring in ping pong tables, foosballs, and beer and wine for a happy hour, it's probably not going to resonate well with your people. They're going to become suspicious and skeptical and wonder what's going on. Whatever you do needs to be authentic and translate to your culture and your values and your brand in order for it to work.
That's a good point, Lisa. I worked for another company where we constantly did social activities. It was beer and pizza at lunchtime, cheese and wine, middle of the day, constant parties throughout the course of the year.
Sounds fun.
Yes, and I was the recruiter for the role, and turnover was off the charts.
Interesting. And why do you think that was?
Well, I don't know if the employees were really engaged. They all had fun, but when it came to supporting the strategy, in terms of empowerment, I think that was lacking.
So sometimes, and in most instances, you need to have people who are passionate not only about the jobs that they're doing, but where they're doing it. So you can't have fun in a workplace if you're not working toward business results. And if you're not winning and working toward business results, that's probably not a whole lot of fun either.
I think the company thought that was a way to engage employees. Keep the employees engaged. Just bring out more fun activities.
Well, the work has to be meaningful too. So there needs to be that connection and that passion there.
So why culture matters? We've defined culture, what it is, what it isn't. However, if an employee should have a strong skill set, they have a strong skill set, they're contributing, they're adding value, does it really matter about the culture? They exceed expectations, their supervisor loves them, they get a promotion, they have great benefits. Why does it matter?
So, well, a lot of times it's not just about the results that we're getting, but how we get those results. And culture matters because it's truly the assumptions and beliefs of employees that drive their behavior. Their behavior is what determines business results. So if you have one employee who's knocking it out of the park and driving toward business results, but doing it in a way that's demeaning and belittling to people, that individual is going to sabotage the culture, and people aren't going to want to emulate those behaviors, or if they see those behaviors being recognized, then they're emulating things that may not be aligned with the company's culture and values. When you have a strong corporate culture, some of the benefits are increased motivation and aligned motivation of employees, a connection, not only to the work that we're doing, but the people that we do it with. Cohesion. Strong cultures build strong teams where people want to work together and collaborate. And a natural byproduct of that is an outstanding spirit. So all of those collectively translate to and impact business results.
I like this next slide. How happy are your employees? And I love my job. And I have to say, Lisa, I very seldom hear anyone say either one of those today. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite.
I think I mentioned to you before, Bill, when we were talking, that personally makes me sad. As someone who has spent a career in HR and is passionate about building great workplace cultures, I want everyone to love their job. I want everyone to be happy, but I know that that is kind of a utopic state, and not everyone is happy. You know, the people on the phone, if I could see their hands, I'd ask, how many of you are happy? How many of you can truly say that you love your job? And it's really because I know the impact of a happy employee. There's a mantra that's pretty well known that says that happy employees equals happy clients or customers. And basically it means, just very simply, that if you treat your people well, that they will in turn treat your customers well, and in the end, everyone wins. People want to do business with companies that treat their people well. And it all goes back to that brand and culture alignment.
68% of employees are currently not engaged in their work. And I experience this quite often because many candidates come to me. They are losing their job or have lost their job because, as they would say, they're no longer engaged. And these are mostly long-term employees. They have been working with the company for many, many years. But all of a sudden, something happens. A variety of things. Change at the top, acquisition, their supervisor leaves, they're not engaged, and they find themselves looking for work.
Absolutely. So there is, in exit interviews, there is a question that is normally asked, and it is intended to determine what one incident or event led to that employee making the choice to leave. Now, exit interviews are typically only done in a situation where an employee chooses to leave. When they're asked to leave, companies care a little bit less about their feedback about what's working and what's not working. But typically there is something that led to that disengagement. It was improper treatment by a coworker, improper treatment by a manager, lack of recognition, being passed over for a promotion. Something didn't work well. So it might be that that person had been actively engaged and now has moved to disengaged, or they could have just been passive, maybe, in a situation where they've been in a company for a very long period of time. Maybe they were loyal to the company because they were comfortable. So it might not be just, a situation, but something else that happened to bring them to a different level of engagement. What concerns me about this statistic is that if only 32% of employees are engaged, that means that 68% are disengaged. And of those, some are actively disengaged. And when someone is actively disengaged, they are actively sabotaging the business. So you might have people who are promoting the business, who are engaged and who are trying to do the right thing for the right reason and make a really significant impact on the business. And they're being sabotaged by people who aren't as happy, who don't support the company, and who are trying to see them fail.
Based on your experience, Lisa, do you see the 68% number going up or down in recent years?
I've been watching Gallup for a number of years, and this statistic is pretty constant. So it fluctuates a percentage point up or down any given year. Last year it was 67% were disengaged, so 33% engagement. It's dropped a little bit. It doesn't fluctuate tremendously, but it's a significant opportunity for all of us to be able to look at our cultures and start to make an impact.
So there's a lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do.
This is an article that I happened to read and discover while doing some research for this program. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's Fortune Magazine's 100 Best Places to Work For in 2017. The key piece, the central theme that ran through all of these 100 companies, it was all about culture. Nothing was said about strategy, about sales, about marketing. And just a couple examples, if you take a look at Publix, the largest employee-owned company in the country, this grocery chain with a family feel gives staff a great opportunity to retire worry-free. I don't see that very often on other websites. Or REI. They're unified by a common passion. Employees say this co-op prioritizes the planet over profits. And if you go down to Delta, the rewards of healthy profit sharing, which has paid out nearly $5 billion over the past 5 years. Employees say it's all a part of the company's caring family spirit. That family environment seems to run through all of these. It's a common thread.
And in most instances, we treat our families well. We like our family. I've heard that friends are the family you choose, but whether it's friends or family, if you care about people, you always strive to treat them well. And it goes back to that mantra, happy employees equals happy clients. So there are a lot of common threads through what those companies do and why they're earning that recognition. You don't hear anything about the products or services that they offer, what they do. It's how they do it and why their employees are proud to work there and why they're a best place to work.
Very powerful message.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So as we do some research, there are 10 signs of a strong company culture that, in my experience, have been consistent. So there are probably a ton more than 10, but for purposes of this list, I tried to narrow it down. So 10 signs that you know that your company has a strong culture is, first and foremost, that your employees are brand ambassadors. Strong cultures have a raving fan base of employees. So if you want to see if that is in fact the case with your company, or for candidates who are looking to join a company prospectively, check out the company's social media pages. What do people say who work there? Find out what the employer referral percent is, or encourage people to find out, do they have an employee referral program? The strongest companies have strong employee referral programs because they know that their talent is the best source of prospective talent for their organization. The second thing is those companies focus on greatness. Strong cultures are filled with people who want to be the best for their customers and for their employees. I actually worked for a company that had competitiveness as one of its corporate values, and it wasn't competitive in a negative way. It was a winning culture and an award-winning culture. Strong culture companies have low turnover. Now, notice I said low and not no turnover, and that's because some turnover is a good thing. The company isn't always going to be the right place for everyone. And employees and companies need to continue to do a check to make sure that this is the right fit for them. Are my values still aligned with what the company values? Am I going to be able to contribute positively to the bottom line? And do I enjoy working for the company? Just because the company has a strong culture, if it's not the right culture for me, it might not be the best place for me to stay. Strong cultures and companies with strong cultures have clear values. They know what's important to them. They define their values and they reward and recognize people for living them. They promote transparency in communication. And with transparency comes trust and also vulnerability. The strongest leadership teams that I've worked with are not afraid to say when they have failed or missed the mark. It's not just about winning. It's not just about accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. It's about having the courage to say, you know what, this is what we wanted to do, but we missed the mark, and this is why, and this is what we're going to do about it. That vulnerability-based trust is so important and promotes that transparency. Again, the trust. When employees and leaders trust each other to do the right thing, the culture naturally strengthens. Strong cultures have a culture of appreciation. They recognize and reward effort, achievement, strategy, and everyday contributions. They know how to celebrate and share success, and they never underestimate the power of a thank you. A thank you is free. It doesn't cost anything. They have clear goals. Everyone in a company with a strong culture knows what the company's goals are, where they're going, and how they're going to get there. And they know, most importantly, how the job that they do impacts business results. If people don't know how the job that they do is impacting the business, then they're probably in the wrong job. Strong companies invest in the future. They invest in the training and development of their people. And that, to me, is a sign that the company is planning for future success. We know that to get where we're going, we may not have the people or the skill set to be able to get there. So let's make sure we're investing in our own success and allowing ourselves to achieve that greatness. And then the most important one for me is fun. When everyone is committed to doing great work in a great environment with great people, it's fun. Everyone is winning and everyone is enjoying what they do and where they do it.
I did speak to some CEOs as part of my research as well, other senior leaders too, and the common theme that they all brought up was integrity, transparency, communication, trust, respect, fairness, all the things that you seem to integrate into this list. And the other thing I thought of, Lisa, in regard to the brand ambassadors, didn't Lady Gaga write a book about turning her fan base into ambassadors through social media? I'm quite certain she did. You just made me think about that.
I love that we're talking Lady Gaga.
Well, our next slide is something that I get asked about quite a bit. How can a candidate assess company culture during an interview? And there's several ways to do it, and some are pretty simple. And some of these are based on my own experience. For example, if you show up early to an interview and just hang out in the reception area, you don't want to show up too early, but the time in the reception area is valuable. For one, you could see how you're treated by employees as they walk past you. But more importantly, you could see how employees interact with each other. John Liacani and I, one of the partners here at the Overture Group, we went out to a potential client many years ago, and within 2 minutes, we heard so much colorful language in regard to two employees and who were interacting with each other. We knew right away. I mean, if I was a candidate, I would have walked out immediately. And we had our concerns going into the meeting. We did take the meeting, but we mentioned it to someone as well, and they were livid that this type of language was overheard in a lobby. But nevertheless, strong indicator what type of culture is in the organization.
So sometimes it's not what behavior is rewarded and recognized, but what type of behavior is tolerated that helps to define the culture as well. So making sure that what you want to be known for is what you're actually known for is a good place to start.
Absolutely. And during the interview process, when you're talking to someone about culture, or asking a question in regard to what would your employees say about the culture here? Listen for the response time. How quick do they respond? The longer they take, my judgment would be the less authentic they are, and they may not be honest or truthful. Response time, I think, is a valuable point. Listen for the warning signs of a problematic culture, like making a huge deal out of a ping pong table. And Lisa and I, we were talking, if they just throw in a ping pong table just for the sake of people at break time could go there, I'm not sure that's really impacting the culture. However, there could be a way.
Right. So, yeah, my flip side to that is if that ping pong table ends up bringing people together who would not have otherwise had the opportunity to work together and builds a stronger team, allows people to de-stress, break away from a busy time of year and have a little bit of fun, and that's what people are celebrating, then it could be a really strong and beneficial thing.
Great. And the last is learn to read between the lines. And this is valuable for just interviews in general. For example, if someone should say promotions that rest on something opening up, means you have to wait for someone to move up or out. I would pause if I heard that in an interview. If someone is really ambitious, wants to be a contributor, add value, that culture may not support that.
Absolutely. So when I'm hiring people, I look for individuals who want to grow with my company, who are committed to their own personal and professional development, and who want to grow. So I believe in creating opportunities where they might not exist today, if it's the right thing for the business and that individual, and allow people to work towards something that maybe doesn't exist today, but that also means that we're not realizing success today that we could in the future. One of the questions that I love to ask people is, whether it's clients or in an interview, is what is the number one reason people are proud to work for this company? And what's the number one reason that you're proud to work for this company? Because that also is an indicator of how people feel and their level of engagement with the organization and what that company should be known for and celebrated for. A lot of times you don't see those things out on the website, especially if they're just talking about products and services.
Great question. So that's during an interview, but there are ways candidates can assess the company's culture prior to the interview, just through doing some research. For example, you can look at the company's website. The website is a treasure trove of information. If you look at the About Us section, and you could read more about what they say. For example, I just took some notes when I went on Fortune's 100 Best Companies. Google, for example, the first thing that hit me, our values in action. Learn about commitment to creating more opportunity for everyone. The Boston Consulting Group, shaping the future together. These are very powerful messages that were on the website. Edward Jones, privately held company that feels like family. And we are proud of it. There's a local company, too, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the name correctly. It looks like Escram. They make high-quality bicycle parts, but the first thing on their website, together we rise, inspiring momentum. To me, these are a window into, they may have a pretty good culture. I really have to go in and do more research on them. But you could, and at the same time, you could also see websites that are totally customer-focused, totally product-focused, totally service-focused. They don't say anything about their employees, anything about their human resources as well. Look at their careers page. Do they have 5 pages of open jobs? And that sometimes is quite common. What does that say about turnover? That's something to consider. Is there any mention on the company's website of corporate social responsibility, awards, distinctions? Some yes, some no. But the ones that don't have anything about that, I would be a little leery, about their culture. And certainly, social media being as big as it is today. You could look at the company tweets, their videos, their Facebook posts, because certainly we know they're doing it to you as the candidate. So you can look at the employer and see what they're putting out. And lastly, and this requires a little more research, is speak with the customers, suppliers, and partners. Once you identify an organization, what industry are they in? Do some research on the industry. Connect with people in the industry on LinkedIn. Try to see who they're connected to. And it is amazing. Customers, suppliers, and partners will give you a wealth of information because they know the company intimately. Just a few things that someone could do. So, we've done a lot of talking about culture, but whose job is it? In most of my experience, Lisa, it's always been HR's job. Throw everything on HR. Because basically what they did was the fun things, the team building trainings and things like that. But is it HR's job? Or is it someone else? Or we started to talk about it's everyone's job.
Right. It is. It is everyone's job. And it's not an HR initiative. It's not a marketing initiative. It's not about company picnics and employee appreciation days, holiday parties. Again, those things are great. But in order to drive real change and ownership of the culture, it's everyone's job. Everyone needs to participate. Everyone needs to own the solutions, and everyone needs to drive that culture. So we talked earlier about Southwest Airlines. Southwest, to me, is a great example of a company that empowers people to live the values and make outstanding experiences a reality. They expect it, they demand it, and they reward it. Great companies understand the importance of allowing their people to create those great experiences for their customers and for one another. You talked about Nordstrom and your experience there. They're also known for that same type of employee empowerment. They expect people to create a great customer experience. So in order for the culture to really thrive, everyone needs to own it. The leadership team needs to buy in. HR needs to support it. The programs that they create need to support it, but the employees are the ones who are really driving that culture.
Sounds like quite a challenge, especially if an organization does not have a very strong culture. But I will say this, I have spoken to several CEOs about culture. Integrity, and I know I went over these before, integrity, transparency, communications, respect, trust, all things that they consider vital to corporate culture. And being able to, at the same time, not just talk the talk, but walk the talk as well. There was a lot of that in corporations today, in the workforce today.
So in order to drive change and to get that C-level support of culture transformation, it's important as business people, and especially as HR people, those HR folks who are on the line, it's important that we understand what's important to the business so we can speak the language of the business. I've worked in a number of different industries, and I've worked with a number of CEOs, and while they may look very different builds, different hairlines, all of the CEOs I've worked with are essentially the same. When I ask them the question, what keeps you up at night? Their answers are pretty similar, and this list includes most of them. Depending on the industry or the business, there might be some others, but typically it's revenue, it's profitability, it's turnover, retaining top talent, safety, absenteeism, presenteeism, and client retention and satisfaction. It is so much easier to keep an employee or a client or customer satisfied and engaged than it is to go out and get a new one. So how do we focus on making sure that we're retaining our top talent and our top customers?
That sounds nice, Lisa, but I know today the stock market is booming. Companies are making record profits. Why should CEOs who are in these situations even care about the pain points, even care about the culture, when the bottom line is thriving like it never has before? They're doing more with less. Maybe their employees aren't happy, but they're making a lot of money.
So, well, and it goes back to, how much more money could they be making if their employees were happy, if their people were engaged and committed to driving that incremental growth and that success that happens intentionally, deliberately, and purposefully instead of because the economy is booming. How do we set ourselves up for the long term and make sure that we're successful even in a down market? Because I will tell you that companies with great cultures are profitable even in a down economy. When you invest in doing the right things the right way, everything else falls into place. It's the how you get the results, not just the what results you're getting.
Well, that brings up the next slide, building the case for culture. Who takes up the mantle in that case to try to impact the culture, to try to change the culture? We know HR always kind of feels that pressure, but if it's everyone, where does a company start to try to get more engagement, to get that empowerment, to get CEO buy-in?
So, well, the first thing to do is really understand what the company's pain points are now. Is it an employee turnover issue? Is it a customer turnover issue? Is it a revenue situation? Is it safety? Understanding what the pain points are of the organization and where to drive that change is the first step. And there's real statistical validation that when you do the right thing, business results improve. Companies with strong cultures are more profitable. They're more productive. They're less prone to absenteeism and presenteeism. They have fewer incidents of employee theft. They have higher growth rates and fewer on-the-job accidents. And they're better at engaging their customers. So, regardless of what the pain is for the business, understanding that when you do the right things, there's going to be a monumental impact to those business results. So when you look back to what keeps CEOs up at night, building the business case for culture, 64% of employees do not believe today that they have a strong workplace culture. Companies with engaged employees outperform those without by more than 200%. These are the things that start to drive that discussion with a CEO. Take that, combined with the amount of money that's lost every year to industries across the globe to turnover. And that's just, $11 billion, and that figure was from last year. So I don't even know what it is today, but that's the recruitment costs, the training and development costs, just the cost of that position being vacant and open, and the impact that has on a business. So when you're doing the right things to retain the right talent, you're actually saving the company money.
Who would bring that information? Lisa, who would research the information, and who would bring it to the CEO? Would that be someone like the CFO or senior leadership team?
It could be the CFO. It could be the HR leader if the company has one. Some smaller companies don't have a dedicated HR team. So whoever has the best access to that data. Who's measuring the turnover, both voluntary and involuntary? Who's measuring the absenteeism for the company? How many sick days are people taking on average per month or per year? What are the engagement scores in the organization? Have we done a survey to get a baseline measure of where we are today so we know where to go? You have to have the data.
Well, 90% of business leaders think culture and engagement strategy is an important factor in business success, which is a great statistic. However, less than 25% actually have a strategy. How do we get the rest on board?
Again, you have to speak the language of the business. You have to understand what is impacting the company, where it's realizing the greatest amount of pain, so that you can employ strategies to address those. But you need to be able to have the conversation. And again, that goes back to that transparency, that trust, and having the right conversation to say, this is an issue. Whether you think it's an issue or not, it's an issue. And if we don't solve it today, it's going to do something about us tomorrow.
What about employees who may not be in a position to put those numbers together or even get the ear of a CEO? Should they think of themselves as maybe being in the wrong culture? Maybe it's time for a change.
They might be in the wrong culture, or they could, take the approach that anything is possible. And every change needs a champion. So having the courage to be able to affect that change is something that I always appreciate in individuals who are willing to speak up and bring something to my attention. So they might not have the actual data, but they might be able to plant a seed that says, you might want to start digging here.
Sounds good.
So you can't manage what you don't measure. And there are a number of different ways to get the information that we've been talking about. But identifying the opportunities to improve requires data. So look at your people data, your turnover. If you're doing voice of the customer surveys, take a look at those. How many of your hires are coming from employee referrals? Employee referral data is a great source to track. If you have a really rich employee referral program and you give people, $2,000 or up to $5,000 to refer great talent, and people aren't taking advantage of that, that's probably an indication that your culture is not as strong as you think it is. And people don't want to refer their friends, family, or former coworkers to that organization. We refer people that we want to work with and who are going to make us look good. But the flip side of that is if the company isn't going to make us look good, we're not going to go out on a limb for that individual and recommend that as a fit.
That makes sense.
Companies need to collect regular data to be able to evaluate that data. Those companies who regularly ask for feedback from their employees, whether in terms of a formal engagement survey or a pulse check type of survey, have turnover rates 15% lower than those that don't. And that's because people feel that, number one, their opinion is valued, but that if they give their opinion, that the company is going to do something about it and it's going to drive that change that we're looking for. And in my experience, when you increase investment on employee engagement and culture by just an incremental amount, it can impact the company's profitability by almost $2,500 per employee per year.
Do you think if an employee should decide they want to take the approach anything is possible and start to gather information or talk to the right people to put information together, do you think with that comes some risk of possibly repercussions if an employee really starts to get out there, and in some ways it could be viewed as this person looking to impact some positive change? In other situations, could be this person's a troublemaker.
And I think it's all about the way that you approach that change. If the intentions are pure, and we have to assume innocence in most situations, and that people want to do the right thing by the company and by us. And so when someone has the courage to bring something to my attention, I appreciate it. I recognize that it was difficult for that person to do, especially if they don't have the position power or authority level to be able to affect the change that they want to see in the organization. I know that they're committed to and loyal to the company, and they want to see the real change. And they'd rather see that positive impact come here than to have to go to the outside. So if they choose to leave the company at some point in time, I want it to be because they've tried everything else and the company has tried everything else and it just still wasn't working.
Great.
Yeah, that's great. Bill and Lisa, we have our first question, which really goes to your last point about the investment. The question is, my CEO wants to build a best workplace culture but doesn't want to invest. How can I get him to spend the money on culture initiatives?
So I'd go back to those, and first of all, it's a great question, but I would go back to those pain points and understand what's really driving the need for that culture change. So is it that the CEO wants to be recognized as a best place to work because everyone else is going down that path? So are the intentions pure or are the intentions superficial? But understanding what the pain points are and those drivers that are going to positively impact the business, and then put together a business case or a model to be able to say, if we do this, this is how we're going to solve those problems.
Great, thank you. If anyone has questions, we have 2 in the queue right now, but if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in here. Our next question, this is a good one. Our HR team is already stretched. What should we do? How should we how should we go about bringing that business case forward?
So one of the, we talked about the fact that culture should not be an HR initiative, right?
Right.
I love this, and I think it's great because one of the best things to do is to find a group of like-minded people, those people who are bringing suggestions forward. They're identifying solutions and letting you know that there's opportunity to improve. Those people are already your culture champions. So ask them to participate in a committee. Get a group of like-minded people together and give them the resources and opportunities to be able to drive the change. It still has to have leadership support. They still need to, provide direction in terms of where they think they want to go and get that buy-in and support. But it doesn't have to be an HR initiative. And in most instances, culture transformation is most successful when you have people from all different functional areas of the business creating those solutions and sharing in the transformation.
That's great. It goes back to it's everyone's job.
Absolutely. And again, it gives leadership opportunity to people too who might not have it in their day-to-day jobs. So how do you give them opportunities for recognition, an opportunity to make a difference and have some fun, work with other functional areas and other folks that they might not have the opportunity to make a positive impact.
That's great. I know a lot of people will be empowered by that. Our next question, we have no idea how to define our culture. Where do we start?
So I'll share my thoughts and then open it up to Bill as well. So the first place to start is by assessing your corporate values. If the company doesn't have corporate values, this is a good opportunity to either define company values or at least start to identify those traits, characteristics, or attributes that you look for all of your current employees to demonstrate and embody, and what you'd be looking for new people coming into the organization to demonstrate and embody. Once you understand that, doing some sort of litmus test to make sure that that's truly how you're viewed by your employees, by your customers, that the things that you value and you want to reward and recognize are the things that are valued and recognized by the company. So starting with that is a really great place. But again, going back to those questions that we talked to about the beginning, what is it that you do and how do you do it differently? Why should you be, recognized for your culture?
I know one of the questions that I've asked myself in many organizations that I've worked in, how do I feel at the end of the day? What have I done to make someone's life better, to contribute to some cause? If we just sold another product, I'm not sure I'm feeling any value. I'm not sure my values are aligned with the company values as well. So it's kind of a gauge for me in terms of where my passion is. Am I tapping into my passion within the organization? And how do I feel it when it's all over? Do I feel I've contributed? Especially asking the question, have I impacted someone's life? Have I impacted the world? at all? In many cases, the answer is no. But it kind of tells me, makes me reflect, why am I here? What are my values? Am I okay working within an organization where my values may not be important to the company? Just some thoughts.
I hope the answer to that is no.
All right, we have another question. This is actually kind of twofold. How do you manage culture when preparing for an acquisition and post-merger? How do you learn the new culture and adjust your team's behavior?
That's a really great question. So a lot of times, one of the big reasons that mergers or acquisitions fail is because company cultures are either discounted or undervalued. So that whole, notion that culture is how we do things around here, it's really important to have alignment in that and to make sure that when you're going through the due diligence process, the company culture is a major discussion point. What are the things that are recognized and rewarded here? How do we do business? How do we treat our employees? What is it like to work here? And what is the value that we bring to our customers? And making sure that there's alignment, because if there's misalignment, it's going to fail. So it might still be a profitable business venture, but you're going to have significant turnover as a result of that. So that's part one of the question. Part two is, what do you do after, right?
Right, after.
So after the merger or acquisition, it's really important to understand whose culture is going to reign supreme and why. If one of the cultures has, maybe is an award-winning culture and the other is not, then making sure that everybody understands and assimilates to the culture is going to be really important. And I've worked with companies that do an actual culture training as part of their onboarding experience, that bringing new people into a company through an acquisition or a merger is really critical for everyone to go through, so that they understand what are the values and guiding behaviors, what are the things that are going to be valued here, and how should we be changing, and then be prepared for the natural attrition and turnover that's going to come from people not resonating with that culture. And that's okay. We want people to work here who actually want to be here and who are committed to doing great work and getting the right results.
Well, that's great. Thank you. We have given you a lot of information, and you may still have questions about making your CEO a Chief Culture Champion or any other questions on culture. Please feel free to reach out to Bill or Lisa. Their contact information is on the PowerPoint that will be sent out as soon as this recording is available. You can also visit our website at theoverturegroup.com to view this presentation anytime in the future. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank you, Bill and Lisa, for hosting.
Thank you.
My pleasure.